In a bright hospital lobby, a skinny, ragged black girl screamed, "They're hurting your mother for money." The white CEO froze in his tracks. But what sent a chill down his spine wasn't the accusation. It was the fact that a homeless child knew exactly what he had tried to hide. Before we dive in this story, let us know where you're watching from. We love to hear your thoughts. "Sir, wait! They're not telling you the truth!" Amina screamed, her voice shrill with urgency. She felt like her heart was about to burst from her chest. "Please, she's not safe. She's not okay." A piercing shriek echoed through the hospital lobby. The skinny, dark-skinned 8-year-old girl was crying out to William Whitman, the powerful CEO of the hospital. Her breath was ragged, her small face flushed with fear and panic. The grand lobby suddenly fell silent, all eyes turning towards Amina, and William Whitman stopped dead in his tracks. He turned, his gaze meeting the girl's. Initially there was annoyance, then a faint smile appeared on his lips, the kind of smile adults give when they see a lost or troublesome child. "I'm just leaving the hospital, little girl," William said, his tone formal, barely pausing. "Everything has been taken care of." In that moment, a cascade of memories flashed through Amina's mind, explaining her profound fear and intense determination. Amina was homeless. From a very young age, around 5-6 years old, her life had been intertwined with the city's hidden corners, struggling to survive. An old man with white hair, simply but neatly dressed, was the only one who had cared for and taught her. He patiently taught Amina her first letters, every story about kindness, honesty, and how a good person could change the world. "No matter how hard life gets, Amina," he would say, gently stroking her hair, "always keep a compassionate heart. Kindness is never wasted, and the truth, though painful, is always the right path." But then the old man fell gravely ill and died in an old, overcrowded public hospital. Amina completely lost her support system, forced to fend for herself from a very young age. She often slept huddled in hidden corners of the hospital, evading the eyes of security guards and staff to find a safe refuge for the night. She was familiar with the hospital's nooks and crannies, knowing the security system's blind spots and how to move unnoticed. She often sneaked into the supply room to charge her phone and sleep temporarily, as it was the least observed place after business hours. Late one quiet night a few days earlier, as Amina secretly made her way through the familiar corridors, she stopped outside a room. Inside was Lucille Whitman, a retired elementary school teacher, fair-skinned, with a gentle but pale face after a heart attack. She was in a standard hospital room, not the VIP section. Miss Lucille opened her eyes. Her gaze met Amina's, but there was no fear or judgment, instead a warm smile. She weakly placed a piece of bread and a pair of old but clean shoes outside the door. That small gesture soothed the great loneliness in Amina's heart. From then on, Amina began to secretly visit Miss Lucille every night, hiding in the hospital to be near this kind woman. Every night, Miss Lucille would tell Amina stories about her young students, about kindness and decency. Amina felt heard and recognized as a person, something she rarely experienced since the old man who raised her passed away. "My son is William Whitman," Miss Lucille told Amina one night, her voice full of pride but her eyes slightly sad. "He's the CEO of this hospital, you know. He's very good, very successful. But he's very busy, he rarely comes to visit me." She sighed, then smiled again at Amina. "But you, my dear little girl, you being here with me makes me happy. You truly are a good girl." When the security guard chased Amina from the hallway, Miss Lucille from her hospital room waved through the glass, smiling affectionately. "Always keep your kind heart, little one," she whispered. That moment planted seeds of hope and responsibility within Amina. She felt an obligation to protect her, as a continuation of what the old man had taught her about truth and kindness. The night before William appeared, as Amina was hiding in the supply room, she heard whispers again. This time they were clearer and more specific than ever. There was a cold, decisive voice of a senior person, directing a nurse on handling patient records. "No one's here now. Plan to remove Ms. Lucille Whitman's heart monitor and stop her special medication. This bed needs to be cleared by 8 a.m. tomorrow for the new VIP patient arriving. The paperwork is ready. This is a top priority directive." The voice rang out, full of authority. The nurse seemed uncomfortable, her voice smaller and full of worry. "But she's still weak. She still needs monitoring. Moreover, she's William Whitman's mother, the CEO. Does he know?" The senior voice coldly interrupted the nurse, lowering their voice threateningly. "That's not our concern. Her financial file has expired coverage. The heart monitor costs too much, and she's exceeded the inpatient days according to the new profit optimization policy. It's a direct directive from the board. Just follow protocol. William Whitman only cares about the numbers on the report. He won't check the details. He's too busy with meetings and deals, and frankly, he rarely deeply cares about his mother. He usually just visits perfunctorily for a few minutes and then leaves. Who would believe he truly cares about her anyway? He blindly trusts the data we provide. So just maintain IV fluids and document that the patient refused specialized intervention." The nurse sighed heavily, accepting her fate. The senior voice was firm. "Precisely. Add some notes about stable condition, not requiring special intervention, and desire to go home. If anyone questions it, just say she met basic discharge criteria. This is how we operate. Profit comes first." Amina was horrified. Her old phone slipped from her hand, making a small noise. She held her breath, trying to hear every word clearly, and then she understood. Understood everything. A chilling fear ran down Amina's spine. They were trying to kill Miss Lucille for money. She already knew William was the hospital's CEO, and she had also heard Miss Lucille say how busy her son was. Now she heard them say William didn't care, and that reinforced her belief that he was a cold, heartless man who only cared about money. A big question arose in her mind. Should she tell William? Would such a person believe her? Or would he just chase her away like the other guards? But then she looked around the dark room and suddenly realized she had no other choice. Miss Lucille was in danger. She remembered Miss Lucille's words about kindness and the old man's lessons about decency. Amina told herself, "She was kind to me. I must be kind to her. Even if I'm afraid, I must do the right thing," and she decided she had to warn William, despite the danger and the difficulty of a homeless child confronting an entire system. Amina, an 8-year-old girl, facing an entire powerful system alone to protect someone she cared about, was an incredibly difficult journey. She was used to hiding, but this time it wasn't for warmth or food. This time she had to fight against something intangible, a cold system that could take a life. Throughout that night, Amina didn't sleep. She paced the deserted corridors, her mind reeling, searching for a way. She tried to approach the nurses' station but was pushed back by their vigilant gazes. Once she saw a doctor pass by, about to open her mouth for help, but then hesitated. Her voice was too small among these cold walls. She felt utterly useless. What could a homeless child do to move busy, powerful adults? Tears began to stream down her smudged face, but then the image of Ms. Lucille smiling, handing her warm bread, reappeared. "I have to do something. I have to do something," her inner voice whispered. That unspoken promise became Amina's sole motivation. The next morning she was exhausted and starving, but her eyes never stopped searching, until William Whitman appeared. He, the powerful CEO, in his expensive suit and sharp, cold gaze, confident but also distant, like someone only familiar with numbers and financial reports. His demeanor exuded busyness and arrogance after an important meeting. In contrast, Amina was just a skinny 8-year-old girl, dark-skinned, with curly hair and large, deep black eyes full of wariness and fear. Her torn, dusty clothes were clear evidence of her nomadic, deprived life. The contrast between William and Amina was like a stark painting between two worlds, one of luxury and power, the other of poverty and vulnerability. The smile on William's lips gradually faded. He looked at Amina, then towards the hospital entrance. The girl's words about fraudulent records and withdrawing medication for money hit a weak spot in the system he was running, a system he knew was under immense pressure for profits. However, William didn't immediately believe her. He was a practical man, and a wandering child speaking such complex terms about fraudulent records or profit optimization policies was hard to credit. He had seen too many people causing disturbances in this hospital, from agitated patients to demanding family members. He simply thought this was a child causing trouble. "That's enough, little girl. This doesn't concern you," he said, his voice cold. "Security! Get this girl out of here!" A flicker of anger appeared in William's eyes. He wasn't just annoyed at being bothered by a child, but also because Amina's words had inadvertently touched upon secrets, upon the hidden corners he knew existed within his own system. He felt as if what she said was exposing a truth he wanted to keep hidden, or at least control. Amina felt a huge shock, an overwhelming sense of disappointment. She had tried her best, risked everything to warn him, yet he didn't believe her, even tried to chase her away. Tears began to stream down her smudged face. Is he really that kind of person? She thought. They must have been right. He doesn't care. She trembled, a feeling of helplessness engulfing her. Suddenly, she remembered a saying Miss Lucille once told her about her son. "My son is very busy. He rarely visits. He's left everything to the hospital to handle." That made Amina believe even more that William was truly heartless, not like a son worried about his mother. "She didn't eat anything last night," Amina whispered, her voice choked, desperately looking at William as the security guard began to pull her away. She threw up twice. "I overheard them talking. They're making fraudulent records. They want to withdraw her medication, remove her machine for money, because they want to clear the bed for a coming VIP patient who's paying cash. If you take her home now, she might not wake up tomorrow. Please, I beg you." Amina's final words, the genuine despair in her eyes, and the mention of the VIP patient made William halt once more. VIP patient? Paying cash? That wasn't on his schedule. The girl's voice, though still small, contained a fear so profoundly real, unlike a lie. A sense of unease crept deeper into his heart. William looked at Amina, saw her thin frame, her old clothes, her eyes red from crying. Perhaps he had overlooked something. He also vaguely heard the whispers of a few nearby staff members. He really seems indifferent, just leaving his mother to the hospital to care for. Who would think a child would care more than her own son? Those words were like a knife twisting in William's gut. He signaled to the security guard to stop, then turned back, his face filled with irritation and suspicion rather than outright panic. He was a man of reason and evidence. He walked straight back through the door, past the reception desk with a determined look, and into the elevator. He no longer cared about anyone's gaze. Amina knew that she had planted a seed of doubt in his heart. On the 5th floor, nurses and doctors were startled to see William. A doctor awkwardly rushed over. "Mr. William, we've just completed Miss Lucille's discharge papers." "Take me to my mother," William interrupted, his voice icy, a never-before-seen coldness causing those around him to shiver. They exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of surprise and worry. This was the first time they had seen William Whitman care so much about his mother. Normally he would just visit perfunctorily, say a few words and leave, leaving everything concerning Miss Lucille entirely to the hospital. As they pulled back the curtain, William's stomach clenched. Miss Lucille was pale, her mouth dry, her breathing shallow, in acute respiratory distress. Her breathing had significantly weakened compared to a few days ago, like a countdown clock of life ticking away. There was no heart monitor, the respiratory support machine had been disconnected. Only a saline IV drip was trickling. "Who authorized the removal of her equipment?" William asked, his voice strained, his gaze sweeping over the nurses and doctors standing there, who were trying to avoid his eyes. The second nurse, her face pale, whispered faintly, almost pleading, We received direct orders from the board, sir." Regarding financial policy," another doctor quickly interrupted the nurse. "She met the basic criteria for transfer, sir. We were just following protocol." "She can't even sit up," William said coldly, his voice full of disappointment and bitterness. "They want her gone to free up the bed? Is my mother just a number in the system I helped build?" No one dared to answer. A heavy silence hung in the air. William pulled out his phone. He dialed a private number and said, "Freeze all discharge procedures related to Ms. Lucille Whitman immediately. Transfer her to the most intensive care unit right now." He felt a temporary helplessness as he realized he was in the midst of a vast network of deception. Then he sat down next to her bed, taking her hand. For the first time in months he sat quietly, not bothering with his phone or work. He looked at his mother's frail face, filled with regret. William confronted the board of directors and the hospital director in a luxurious but suffocating meeting room. William's gaze was no longer cold but filled with extreme anger and disappointment. The director spoke first, his voice full of authority. "William, are you putting the hospital's reputation in the hands of a wandering child? You're acting emotionally and unrealistically by trusting Amina, someone with no credibility, instead of a system that has been operating stably for a long time." Another board member added, "What does a homeless girl know about medicine that you would believe? Hasn't Amina been caught wandering here before, intentionally sneaking into restricted areas? She's not trustworthy." The director calmly presented fabricated medical records and optimized performance reports proving Miss Lucille was stable and voluntarily discharged. He glanced around the room, a silent threat to the staff present, creating a solid network of deception that isolated William. "Who ordered the removal of equipment and manipulation of my mother's records?" William demanded. "I demand a transparent explanation." The director, with a smug and unwavering demeanor, replied, "We were just following the cost optimization procedures that you yourself approved and signed the relevant documents for, William." She had exhausted her premium insurance coverage, and those support devices are expensive, no longer covered by the minimum service package. We have to keep the cash flow moving. We have to ensure quarterly profits to satisfy shareholders. We're talking about millions of dollars in profit here, William. You're the CEO. You understand that better than anyone." William was stunned. He stared at the projection screen displaying a resource optimization chart, below which was a list of signed policies. He realized that his own signature, his blind trust in profit optimization, without thoroughly understanding the consequences, had put his mother in danger. His mother was just a number in the system he helped build, a victim of his own hand. This struggle was not just a battle between William and the board, but also reflected a deep conflict between human value and systemic profit, leaving him profoundly tormented. William stood in his office, looking out at the city. He was torn between two choices: trust Amina and stand up for what's right, risking his position, reputation, and future to confront a corrupt system, or trust the system, maintaining blind faith in what he had built, at the cost of his mother's life and his own conscience. He slumped into his chair, burying his face in his hands. He looked at the small photo of his mother on his desk, a picture of her smiling gently, just as she looked at Amina. Her teachings about kindness, her sacrifices when he was young, came flooding back. He compared them to the cold words of the board of directors and the stark truth of his mother's condition. His mother's question, "Are you happy?" echoed in his head. He realized he wasn't happy at all. He had lost his way in the labyrinth of profit. He felt disgusted with himself. William found Amina huddled in a hidden corner of the hospital, being shooed away by another nurse. He intervened, his gaze no longer suspicious, but filled with a yearning for truth and redemption. "Come have breakfast with me, Amina," William offered. Amina looked at the wad of cash he pulled out, her eyes wide. Money? She had never had so much money. But she immediately shook her head, shrinking back a little. Her eyes were full of fear and caution, as life experience had taught her not to trust adults, especially those who appeared powerful. "I don't need it," Amina whispered, her voice tiny. "I just want her to be safe." William didn't force her. He calmly sat down next to her, talking about his loneliness in the whirlwind of work, about the emptiness that money couldn't fill. He looked directly at Amina, for the first time confessing his own mistakes with sincere and painful honesty. "I've been too disconnected from reality, Amina. I accidentally created a heartless system. I've forgotten the values my mother taught me. I'm sorry." He moved the wad of cash closer, his voice more patient and sincere than ever. "Please, take it. This is my gratitude. You saved my mother, and you also need to be safe. You can use it to buy warm clothes, to eat a really good meal, to have a safe place to sleep tonight. You deserve that, Amina." He paused, looking deep into her eyes. "Consider this a reward for your courage. You did what no one else dared to do." "When did you risk your life for her?" William asked. Amina looked at him, her eyes no longer fearful but full of understanding. She remembered the cold nights alone in the hospital, the fear of being chased away, and then the moment Miss Lucille, a stranger, reached out and gave her warm bread, a smile without judgment. "She called me by name, like my mother. No one has done that in years. The old man who raised me always said kindness was the most important thing. Miss Lucille showed me that kindness. She saw me as a person, not as a homeless child to be driven away. She showed me that there is still kindness in this world." William looked at Amina. In her eyes he saw the sincerity, compassion, and raw truth he had lost. This was when he fully trusted Amina and found his own path. He understood that the kindness of a homeless child, nurtured by humanitarian values, had redeemed both his mother and his own conscience. Finally, after a long hesitation, Amina gently nodded, tentatively reaching out to take the wad of money. The feel of the cool paper in her hand was strange. She put the money in her torn pocket, still feeling a sense of wonder. The amount was too large for her, but more importantly, she felt the warmth of William's genuine kindness. Immediately after, Amina used only a small portion of that money to buy a warm loaf of bread and a carton of fresh milk. Most of the rest she saved to buy small items like a new comb, some fresh fruit, or sometimes an old book to bring when visiting Miss Lucille. That was her way of showing her care and gratitude, as well as continuing the kindness Miss Lucille had shown her. A fragile but clear ray of hope lit up in Amina's heart. William returned to Miss Lucille's room. He no longer hesitated. He made a phone call, his voice resolute, demanding the immediate restoration of all support equipment for her and her transfer to the most intensive care area under the personal supervision of a trustworthy medical team. He could also personally intervene in the treatment process, requesting the medications that had been cut. William stepped out of the room, facing the hospital staff and some reporters who had begun to gather due to rumors of the incident and the CEO's unusual absence. He stood before them, his gaze firm, unwavering. He publicly revealed the truth about the board's manipulation and the erroneous policies that had led to his mother's critical condition. He announced that he would resign as CEO and expose everything, regardless of any legal or reputational risks. He accepted sacrificing everything to do what was right. No longer the William of old, who blindly trusted the system and valued profit over people. Thanks to William's timely action, Miss Lucille's life was saved. The image of her recovering, smiling with William and Amina was a vivid testament to the little girl's warning. Afterward, William not only resigned but also withdrew all his capital from the private hospital system, publicly provided evidence, and cooperated with authorities to expose the wrongful acts of the former board of directors and management, accepting all personal, legal, and reputational risks. He visited patients throughout the hospital, met with others, listened to their stories, realizing that many had also been affected by early discharge or cost optimization policies. He publicly apologized to staff and patients, pledging to investigate similar cases and take responsibility. His actions created a powerful wave, a nationwide healthcare reform movement where many conscientious doctors and staff in the industry began to speak out. William was no longer just a former CEO, but also became a prominent social activist, dedicating his time and resources to fighting for patient rights and a more humane healthcare system. This journey was far from easy. William faced countless legal challenges, including multiple lawsuits from the former board members seeking to silence him and reclaim lost profits, dragging him through protracted and draining court battles. His assets were temporarily frozen, and he faced intense scrutiny and interrogations from investigative authorities, being considered an accomplice for a long time before the truth was brought to light. His reputation was severely damaged. He became an outcast among the elite. Those who once admired him now turned their backs, mockingly calling him a destroyer. He was forced to sell nearly all his personal assets, including his luxurious mansion and expensive car collection, to cover legal fees and use the remaining money as initial capital for the charity foundation. He moved to a smaller apartment, his life completely transforming from luxury to simplicity, sometimes even scarcity. He struggled with the transition from a profit-driven business model to a non-profit operation with limited initial funding and complex charity regulations. During long, sleepless nights, William confronted extreme loneliness and the torment of his past. At times he doubted whether he was on the right path or if it was all just madness. Yet William persevered. He dedicated hours to learning the rules of nonprofit organizations, personally knocking on the doors of potential donors, and persistently organizing community talks to rally support. He gradually built a team of like-minded doctors and volunteers who believed in his vision of humane healthcare. The conversations with Amina, the stories of patients suffering, and the grateful looks in their eyes gradually washed away the hardened coldness in William. He was no longer obsessed with profit margins, but rather with the numbers of lives saved, of smiles restored. He became a symbol of change, a testament to how even the greatest mistakes can lead to the greatest redemption. William established the Lucille Foundation, a large non-profit fund dedicated to supporting medical care for patients in difficult circumstances or end-of-life patients, not based on profit. This was his way of atoning and rebuilding trust. As for Amina, she became an indispensable part of William and Ms. Lucille's lives. William committed to caring for her, ensuring she had a stable life and could attend school. He arranged for Amina to live in a safe, clean, reputable shelter and covered all her tuition and living expenses so she could start school. In the first days at school, Amina was still shy and overwhelmed by the world of books and classmates. She was sometimes teased for her old clothes or her habit of collecting leftover food, which made her feel sad and want to give up. However, Miss Lucille, despite her frail health, would often visit Amina at the shelter, reading to her and sharing stories of resilience. William, though burdened by his own struggles, always made time for Amina, listening to her fears and celebrating her small victories. Their unwavering support, along with her fierce desire to learn so no one could ever deceive her again, reignited her strength. Amina began to devour every book she could find, her mind eager to absorb knowledge, slowly but surely catching up to her peers. Amina was not just a recipient of help, she also actively asked William for permission to spend weekend afternoons at Lucille House to read to elderly patients or help with small tasks within her ability. She used her experience living on the streets to tell William about the difficult circumstances she had witnessed, helping him direct the foundation's activities more effectively. William regularly visited Amina, not just to check on her, but also to listen to her innocent yet profound stories and thoughts, which helped him reflect on his own life. He saw in Amina not just a child in need of help, but also a source of inspiration, a constant reminder of kindness and truth. William understood that giving Amina a bright future was the most practical way to repay her kindness and courage, as well as to maintain the flame of compassion that Miss Lucille had ignited. He wanted Amina to live a different life, no longer wandering and fighting alone. At the inauguration ceremony of Lucille House, a new, non-profit, compassionate care center, filled with laughter and warmth, Amina, in a pristine white dress, stood between William and Ms. Lucille. All three smiled, their eyes filled with peace and happiness. Around them were patients supported by the Lucille Foundation, dedicated staff of Lucille House, and reporting journalists. Their image, standing together like a family, was a living testament to the connection between kindness and redemption. Amina felt a significant change in William. No longer the cold, distant man, but one of warmth and genuine concern. She knew she was not alone, and her small act of kindness had created something monumental, changing a person and an entire system. In his eyes, Amina saw the profound peace that had replaced his former restlessness. In turn, William learned from Amina a resilience and an unyielding spirit he'd never known. Deep down, Amina felt a silent pride. Her life, once a blank page swept away by the wind, had now begun to be written with meaningful words. If I had stayed silent that day, Miss Lucille would be gone. But someone listened to me, Amina said to William, her voice calm but resolute, having matured greatly. And thanks to you, I learned how to be human again, William replied, his eyes warm. He placed a hand on Amina's shoulder, his voice deep and contemplative. I once thought I was building an empire, improving the system, but it turns out I was just creating a prison for compassion. Now we will build a place where kindness is the only profit. Amina looked at the keepsake bracelet her mother left her, smiling. Her gaze turned to the blue sky, as if her mother was also smiling at her from above, promising a future where kindness will triumph over profit, and numbers will be seen as people. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.